we got a lot of questions on how we hunt during the rut differently than we would any other time of the year.
Mm. I think this year it really hit me how much timing is involved in a rut. How I
Yeah.
have to be, I have a very short window when a big buck moves in a position and it's hanging there in daylight. These big bucks aren't running around through funnels like everybody thinks they are, especially in high pressure areas. I mean, they go and they get on a doe area and they kind of lock in on these does. And when they do cruise, they kind of cruise in thick cover between two bedding areas where ain't a long distance. And that's not to say they don't go long distance hikes, once or twice during a rut. I mean, otherwise nobody'd kill anything, right? But
Right.
if you think about more of them staying in tight cover where the doe is bed, that kind of thing, I think it really helps. But I am noticing too that a lot of the best spots that I hunt during a rut really don't have the sign you'd think. One spot I've known from years is a really good spot, and I just kind of stay out of there. I snuck in there 3 times this year. And the first time I saw 17 deer, mostly bucks. And, the second time I think I saw 7. And then I saw, 5 or so the next time. But there wasn't really any rubs around. There was a couple, but I mean, not like you'd think, but just the way the terrain lays out. I mean, you're more hunting like the doe bedding and the terrain where they should be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Than the sign, which is different than when I travel trip, because when I travel, I'm not sure for sure where they're going to be. And I kind of use that sign as a pacifier to tell me there's, bucks there. But I think I got to get a little more trusting on terrain on those travel trips based on that. Because when I go into those spots where I'm sure there's a big buck and the terrain is set up correctly, I generally have interactions, even though there's no, real good big buck sign. That's not to say there isn't any on the property or anything like that, but it's to say that the actual spots don't always have all that sign, especially if you're in public land or low deer density where the deer don't spend a lot of time competing against other bucks. They got it kind of to themselves.
Yeah.
But the main thing is that window that you have of a few days. One of the bucks I had on camera for 5 days straight. Every morning, every evening, he was on that camera going into a doe bedding area. But it was at night. So I finally slipped in there after he showed up in the morning in daylight. And it was just after dark the night before, and I had a good wind. I thought tonight might be the night he messes up. Went in there, didn't see him, slipped out, and he was on the camera just after I left. But studying maps and stuff while I was out there and looking at what I was seeing, I figured out that that deer was coming from a landmass out in the cattails. And I moved to that landmass the next day, which I think was actually day 5 of that buck coming in every day. And walked up there, and there's a big shed that's off of deer bigger than him laying there on a landmass. So I knew nobody had gotten in there because it was laying there from last year. And when we did the workshop last year, everybody stood in that spot. So that deer came in there after we did the workshop. It dropped his antler right there. But I went in there, and it was obviously where that deer was coming from because there was rubs in there all over the place. But I think where I intended to set up, he was bedding. I think I bumped him. I never heard him bump or anything, but the sign showed me that the deer was probably bedding right there. And then when I went to go down, I saw a light on the land where I'd hunted the night before, where I was getting his picture, where he was coming to check on his doe every day. And then when I left, I ran into this young guy who shot the doe that he was visiting every day. And that was the end of that buck. I never seen him again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you got a short window. You got to go in there, make a move, and you either kill him or you don't. And you can't dwell on it. A lot of guys would be like, well, that's the buck I'm hunting. And they just keep hunting it after it disappears or whatever. And then it's never going to have any relaxation to come back out in daylight again. And you're just beating a dead horse. You can sit back, you do some observations and stuff, but it's better to have a variety of targets.
Yeah.
And kind of like, well, that one's settling down, you go after another one. And that's kind of what I've been doing, hopping from buck to buck, moving around. And actually, I think one thing that's getting me is that I have almost like too many targets. Like there's bucks I'm thinking, man, I got to hunt that. But this one's hot, but I got to hunt that one. But this one's hot. And then I miss windows and stuff, and it's kind of frustrating. But I just got to, focus on what do I really want and what is set up correctly.
Yeah, for sure. I would tell you, like, I don't hunt the rut that much different than when I do any other time of the year, other than the fact, like, I focus more on like intel from either people around that have seen, like, people always like, oh, I just saw a giant buck out in this field over here, and then I'll like key on that. Okay, that buck, he's in this field with a doe. They're probably going to be in this bedding area this evening or midday. I mean, that's what we did today. The farmer texted me midday. He's like, hey, I just watched a doe and a big buck run into this area, which he didn't know it's bedding. He doesn't know the first thing about deer hunting. He's like, oh, they just ran down this way. I'm like, oh, that's where, they're probably in this particular bedding area. That's where we set tonight. We saw the buck. We couldn't set up where he came out or whatever. So
and even outside of the rut, that's how we kill a lot of them. I mean, think about the buck killed on the Battle of the Bows.
Yeah, it's just during the rut,
and you did the hunt, and that is kind of in our area. That is like the very beginning of rut, but still, you saw the buck, you went in there, and you didn't wait 5 days. You go in there right away, and you take your chance and you try to get it done.
Yeah, I think some of like maybe a little bit of the difference in a rut is sometimes you'll get away with a little more during the rut. Like you can set back a little farther and be a little less aggressive and that kind of stuff, because especially if they're on a doe. But I also have some really good rut spots that are like like from trail camera data over the past 10 years or 15 years, however long I've been running trail cameras. Just like I got a particular spot that October 25th, there's always a good buck in it. And I have another one that November 4th is always a good buck in it. It happened again this year. Like some nice bucks showed up those two dates.
I see that too. The historical data is huge.
Yeah. So if you can, like, if you have a particular funnel, or your typical rut type areas people always talk about, and you can run some trail cameras over the years on them, and you kind of figure out a little bit, like, okay, typically a lot of times on October 31st on Halloween, there's a buck that runs through there, and that's the only time that they go for some reason or another. I mean, the reason is probably because there's a doe and that lives there that comes into estrus that time of year, but it's probably more that the doe family there is what's causing that than anything. But anyway, that's how I approach the rut. It's a fun time of the year. Like when I go out of state, though, I'll be honest with you. Like I'm going to Ohio next week. I don't know anything about Ohio. I don't have cameras there or nothing. I'll probably just hunt terrain features that are that funnel deer that are near bedding areas is what I'll end up doing. Hey everybody, if you like the channel, make sure you subscribe right here. And if you like the clips, I got 2 more options for you. 2 options right here. Subscribe right here. See you guys.